Davidson is a people analytics customer advisor at One Model, where he works at the intersection of HR data and the messy reality of organizational change. With a decade of experience in people analytics and a background spanning NASA's JPL, Argo AI, and Empower AI, he has spent his career helping organizations understand their workforce and lately helping them reckon with what AI is doing to it. For the past 18 months, Kyle has been publicly wrestling with AI's impact on knowledge workers through his Substack series, pAIscal's Wager, a 7-part chain of reasoning that moves from macro structural forces down to what one person should actually do about all of this. He is not a detached observer. He is someone in the middle of the disruption, thinking and writing his way through it in real time. Kyle, thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to the CultureCon webinar series.
Thank you, Zach. Pleased to be here with you guys. This is the first time I've given this talk, so if it feels a little disjointed or whatever, bear with me. But I am excited to talk about this with you guys. Before I dive into who I am, I just want to reemphasize something that Zach just talked about here. Is that vision statement? Believing that individuals, regardless of role, have the power to make work more meaningful. I love that mission. So I really tried hard to sculpt this talk with that in mind. Some of you might be, leaders with authority at your company, or you might be an individual contributor. You might not work in HR at all. That's okay. We're all in different places, and everybody can have a voice in this moment with AI. So just a little bit about me. I've been in people analytics for over a decade, like Zach said. What does that mean, right? I help companies, whether I've been working at those companies or now as a customer advisor at One Model, we help to measure the workforce. So, all of the traditional metrics like headcount and promotions and who's leaving and why are they leaving and all of those things. That's what we do at One Model. And I work at One Model because we have the best people analytics product on the market. I don't say that because I work at One Model. I work there because I say that. I've been a customer, and later on joined One Model directly, and I've been here for about 3 years now. And I get to work with a cross section of our customer basis on a monthly basis, a regular basis. So we have a lot of strategic conversations about how AI is, sort of stepping on this space like everything else in the world. And the people that I work with are trying really hard to enable individuals at their place of work. I did throw in this is a pre-COVID, pre-bearded Kyle here. It was I just took a selfie walking into the JPL administration building where we had a copy of the Curiosity rover. And I got to work there and celebrate with our kids when we landed Perseverance on Mars. In 2020. So super cool, and excited to talk. One little quick note here: I didn't design these slides. I'll circle back to that later. So to sort of start you off, this is where I've been for about 18 months. AI has been around with us in the public since about 2022, but around 18 months was when I started to take it really seriously. Before that, I'd always find some sort of reason to say, like, it's not ready, it hallucinates too much, I can't put my data into it. There was all kinds of reasons why not. And so what I was doing was just reading as much as I could, watching YouTube videos, at webinars of people that are, AI engineers, trying to absorb what this was. And the more that I did that, I didn't feel better. I didn't feel more informed. I felt worse about it. And it's like one of the first technology things or job related things that I had that. And this was a big struggle for me. I did eventually find my way through the other side, and I'll talk about like how I did that a little bit. But if this is you today, just know that you're not alone, right? It's not just you. We're all in this. We're all dealing with this. This is a quick demonstration, right? These aren't data points or anything like this. This is just directional. If the top blue line is what AI is capable of, which changes week over week now, and is tough to sort of keep up with. The bottom line is what your organization or the people that work in your organization have actually absorbed and what they can actually do with AI, right? So there's this big gap between AI can solve, math equations or problems that are novel and human mathematicians couldn't, down to, I'm an individual knowledge worker. I can do this with AI, and I'm allowed to do this with AI. So like, there's this big gap here, and the gap gets talked a lot about in the media. You hear 95% of AI pilots are failing. What does that mean? Does that mean AI sucks? No, not necessarily. It means that it's hard for us to adapt to a new technology like this, and particularly when it's so pervasive and so powerful. So what I want to emphasize is that we're all living on this bottom line, every one of us. And that distance between what AI is potentially capable of and what we can actually do with it is not how behind you are, right? It's how much time you have to catch up, to drive productive work in your little niche of the world, and so on and so forth. Um, the gap is a people problem. That's not a technology problem. We'll talk a little bit further in the talk about change management and how people address change. But this is probably the thing I want to drive through home the most is that whether you're a leader or not, you can make positive change in this space because this is a people problem. So whether you're an individual contributor or a leader, you can demonstrate, how to go about doing that change. How do I affect that change on my team, within my family, for my children? All of those are things that you can do, and you can do it today. So, we've all sat through this moment. Ours at One Model was maybe 2 years ago now. We actually had an all hands, and I remember suddenly like, oh, AI is like a thing now. We're actually going to do this, and it's a real thing, right? That announcement does not just kick open the door and lead to AI being the thing that's driving all of the work. The announcement is not the change. All of the work that happens behind that is what actually makes something effectual. And it's messy, it's not easy, and it's something that we're still doing even after 2 years. And so I expect it to not cool down. If you feel like the heat around the conversation or the temperature around AI is like exceedingly hot, I expect it to continue for a little bit, and that's difficult. It's okay. So there are three forces that are the main things that cause this, right? The first one is security, legal, infrastructure, all of these things that our work life runs on. The guys in cybersecurity or the folks that are doing legal for your organization have to grapple with what does this mean if we put our sensitive data, whether that be data from your company or about your customers or whatever that data is. It's important to you because it has value. What happens if I put it into Chat GPT and suddenly that goes across that threshold? Is that at risk for my organization? We all need to grapple with this. It's not easy, right? So like, just for a point of reference, my active customers that have been customers of One Model for years, we had the conversation about like, okay, if we bring AI into our solution, what's the legal language that we have to find to let this happen? And sometimes that conversation takes months and months and months to just be able to allow something to be turned on. That's not easy. It's not instant, and it's good work. It's valuable work that everybody's doing in those jobs, and we need them to make sure that we're not doing something risky. We're not giving up our alpha, as you hear people talk about in the media, and allowing us to use these things safely. The second one is probably the biggest one, right? Change management. People that are on the call, if you work in HR, if you work in process design, if you work in IT project management, you've dealt with change management. It's not unfamiliar to you. You can't just say, here's a new tool, go, and expect that your people are going to actually do that. You have to help guide the individual human being through that change. And just know that it's not the only thing that's going on in that person's life, right? The world is very stressful at times. And so when all of that stress is sitting on top of your change, you have to take that into account, right? You have to guide that person through it. And then the third one is authority. Authority is kind of related to change management, but in the case of AI, this one's a little bit more specific, right? Um, as a knowledge worker, the value that I have to people that I work with, to my employer, is predicated on me having knowledge, right? And being able to bring that knowledge or work to bear at the right moment. And throughout my career, I've been that person in the workplace, right? Like I've been the person that, oh, you have an Excel problem? That's where we take it. I helped my wife, who's a teacher, do some Excel work for her team when they're looking at the data that their kids were bringing back for the school year. That gives value to me as a person, and I feel valuable because of that. AI coming onto the scene kind of challenges that, right? Like what does it mean when a machine can read across all of my documents and then spit something out faster than I could have? Um, and it's pretty good. It can be pretty good. It's not always, right? There's lots of precautions that should be part of what we think about there. But what does it say about my worth and my perception when that authority is being challenged? Um, Logins are not adoption, right? So again, if you've driven out new tools into your workplace, there's always a push of like, well, how many people are logging in? What's their actual usage? What's the value that we're actually getting out of this? This is a very, very hard question to answer with AI. Um, uh, if you and your company are struggling through this, stay tuned because we've got some stuff in this space, and I can't talk about it yet, but very shortly we're going to be talking about how you actually can measure AI impact and effectiveness. So again, along this journey, I always had a reason. It hallucinates. I can't trust it. It changes its answer from here to there, asking the exact same question. That felt like having standards. And so I just sort of like walled it off and pushed it off. And then AI kept going. AI kept going. AI kept pushing forward. And eventually I hit this point where it just sort of, you know, it crystallized for me that I wasn't going to be able to continue to just wall it off. Um, but I want to emphasize that you're not late. If you go on LinkedIn right now, you'll see all kinds of wildness in your feed, just people telling you that they've built all kinds of craziness. Um, that's the most rosy picture of everybody's personal situation. Just remember that. It's the same thing on your Instagram feed. You know, you're not behind. Yes, people are doing some very cool stuff with AI right now. That doesn't mean that you can't start now if you haven't yet. So why is AI implementation failing or AI enablement? Part of it is back to that fear, right? If I as a individual contributor on a team, I have my book of work and I do good work and I hear good things from my manager or from my peers that it's valuable. And then AI comes onto the scene. It's really making me have this question about, where's my place in the world and how do I continue to do this? That kind of struggle is something that everybody's trying to wrap their head around, you know, and AI hasn't gotten to the place where suddenly everybody's unemployed, right? So it's like this in between phase where we're just like, okay, what is this, and how do we get through it? The Turing test is an interesting sort of idea, right? The Turing test being the sort of very classical idea of, can I figure out this thing that I'm talking to? Is it a machine or is it a human being? I think we've gotten to the point definitely where you can have a conversation with a bot, whether on in an AI tool or on Reddit or Twitter or whatever. And a lot of times it's not a person you're talking to, it's a thing, right? But what happens when that thing can write an email better than me? What happens when it's more patient with my child than I am on a late Thursday night? Um, how does that affect me as the human being in that situation? Um, this was something I ran across um, maybe 6 months ago or so. It's a description of what everybody is feeling with respect to AI. Ontological shock. I really like this framework. So your ontology is basically your viewpoint of the world. Maybe it's your strategic beliefs or the way that you think about your role in society. And an ontological shock is something comes along and just sort of snaps that out of focus, and suddenly that doesn't feel as true as it was before. And we've dealt with this a number of times before, but maybe not on the scale that AI is. Another example would be, if I'm a small town factory worker and I grew up in that town, and maybe when I'm 45, the plant or the factory closes. What happens to that town? What happens to that worker? That's an ontological shock, right? They had a perceived idea of what their world was before, and it's changed now. AI is doing that same thing, and it's really just the first time that it's at this scale or specific to knowledge workers. So because of all of that, right? If you're in HR, you've done this kind of work before. You've done change management before. You've rolled out new systems. You've designed new workflows. You've dealt with a tough problem in the workforce. You already know what those practices are. Um, it's just that you're also now a part of that population, and that can be a little weird. But I think as someone who's interested in being a leader, you just need to step into that space and own it. It's not something to be afraid of. Um, yeah, that's just a reemphasis. So this is the traditional change curve, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Everybody's probably familiar with this. I actually don't quite like the shape of this. I actually think depression should probably be the bottom of the trough, but whatever. This is just illustrative again. Every time you do some change management, in your company, in your process, in your tools, your people are going to go through this change. We know that's just part of being a human being, right? Like I try to resist it. I get angry. I start bargaining. I'm depressed about it, and then finally I get through the other side, and I accept the change. I get it. I know how to make it work. The difference with AI is that it's at this weird space where it's a continual process, right? Like I might have been good with what AI was doing a month ago, and then they've released all these new models. I need to go re-understand what's going on here. What's this new tool? What's happening in this new space? In effect, what this is doing is taking the normal change curve and it sort of turns it into a sine wave. So not only are you as an individual going through this change multiple times, but the people around you, your team, the people that report to you, whatever, they're going through that change multiple times. This is something that we all need to be thinking about, and we need to help manage through that. So I think we've got a poll, Zach, where we might just ask, where are you feeling today? It doesn't necessarily have to be with respect to AI, but that's kind of the purpose of the talk. So I'm actually at a acceptance. Oh, I can't vote. I'm a host. Um, that's funny. Where are you at today? And then maybe we'll circle back and see where our results are. So I'm on this change too, right? And I've gone through it a number of times. Some days I feel really great and I dive in and I go learn more and I try new things. I'm spinning up subagents and going, wow. And then the very, very next day, I might have pushed myself so hard that I get right back into denial or depression. This is normal. It's part of what we should expect all human beings to feel as you're going through this change. It's not backsliding, you're not falling. This is just growing a new muscle, right? So, part of what I'll talk about in a minute is sort of normalizing that people are going to be going through that process. It's not something that you can reject, or stop somebody from going through. It's part of being a leader is helping people to get through that. Oop. And then when you go from the individual to the organization, you're going to have a problem of everybody being at different spaces, right? If I'm a project manager and I'm leading a team through change, I have to understand that each individual is going through their personal change curve, but also we as a team are in combination going through that change curve too, right? So the way that you help the individual and the way that you help the organization might not necessarily work in the same space, but both of them are important frames of reference as you're thinking about how to respond. So now let's get into the sort of meat of the tools, right? So we've described how people are feeling and what change they're going through. What can I do from here? Lead by example. You know, it's important for things to be transparent and visible. Again, this is another thing that we do really well at One Model. We believe in transparency, and it shows up in our product, but also in the way that we talk internally, right? You've got to be willing to demonstrate that AI is not something easy. It's not something that you just say, "Hey, I built an amazing deck." You need to show your people, especially if you have authority, but also, if you're just a person that's trying to help others to move through this work, show them that you fail and that you try again and that you try again. It's important, especially for those that have authority, to be able to do this. For someone to say, I had a board prep deck that I had to work through, and I tried AI on it, and it sucked. That's not something to just reject AI from, but it's something to say, like, look, I'm not great at this yet. Leading by example is one of the key ways where we can just get over that hump to say, like, yeah, we're all going to be doing this. Number two, make room for experimentation. So both in the technical sense, right? Your IT and your cybersecurity team should be doing what they can to enable folks to do things safely. That's making sure that you have the right policies, that you have the right tools, that make sure that the data is protected, but also in the language that we use around what people are doing. It can be very difficult for a person to do something that seems challenging, and then if somebody says an innocent comment or interrupts them, you can break their flow of learning and experimentation, and that's exactly what you don't want to do, right? In a very personal place, my daughter is 12. She had designed this little presentation for my wife and I about why she's ready to get a phone, and I just shut it down before she even got into the presentation. And afterwards, my wife came to me and said, like, "Hey, you probably shouldn't have done that. That was not great because you just shut it down without at least allowing the space for experimentation." And I was like, "Yes, uh, that was wrong." And so I had to go then apologize and work that backwards. But it can be very innocent, right? Like, I have a friend that works in cybersecurity. Uh, if you're familiar with the cybersecurity space, it's one place that's AI is really leaning heavily on, right? There's a whole bunch of new risks of exploits and hacking and all kinds of things. So, I'd been working with this person, and their AI spend was trending up. And then that person said, like, all of a sudden it just stopped. It like flatlined. And I asked him, and I said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And he's like, "Well, someone made a comment about how much my token spend was. And so I didn't feel like it was the right thing to be doing." Um, And I think maybe that comment's probably in jest, right? Like, wow, look at your token spend. You spent $100 last month. Which by the way, that ramps up like really quickly. Um, but that very innocent, jokey kind of comment just shut down that person from further experimentation. And so, I told my friend, I was like, you really gotta go, right? You've got to be one of the people that are pushing the boundary of this. And then, they really started driving their AI stuff forward, and that's cool. That's an example where, anybody can find somebody and give them a little bit of juice when they feel stuck. Ask where your people actually are, right? It doesn't have to be a survey, it doesn't have to be employee engagement, but if you as a leader don't know what your people are doing, there's no way for you to help them through that process, right? You don't know where they are on the change curve. You don't know what they're technically capable of with AI. You have to have this conversation on a repeated basis, and it probably should be very open for other people to see. We really need to define what good looks like. Um, for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is like AI needs this, right? When you talk with your Claude or your Codex or whatever, and you say, "Hey, I want to do this," it will have some assumption about what that's going to look like. If instead you say, "Here's what and a good example of this process looked like when I did it manually. Help me to design something that works with an agent to be able to reproduce this without me having to do that." So you're going to get better results coming out of the other side if you can define what good looks like now. What's funny about this is true of human beings in our workplace as well, right? We've all been a part of something. Somebody leaves the company, and then now you inherit that incredibly messy Excel sheet that you can't even describe all of the functions it's doing, but it runs a core part of your business. Um, I was watching a stream once or a podcast, and somebody that had worked at Twitch was describing how they used Google Sheets to do something, to display who was like the top streamer on Twitch, and that ran a major part of their business. It was all in Google Sheets. If you don't define what good is, if you don't define what that process is to get from A to B, then it's going to be different every time, and AI is going to have a difficult time of being a help. If anything, it's just going to make it worse. That's also true of your people. And number five, we need to normalize the days of personal or professional immobility. Um, this doesn't mean every single day, right? Like, I don't mean doing no work for weeks, but on those days where yesterday I pushed my brain and my understanding of AI really, really hard, and then today I just don't feel it. I don't have the juice. I don't have the extra energy to be able to push that forward and to push myself. That's okay. Um, Especially people with authority or people that are leaders within your organization, they need to visualize that they're struggling too, and normalize that, allow it to happen, and because we know it's something that everybody's going to be going through. So I want to pause here for a second, encourage you to take a screenshot. I actually think that this is broadly applicable of what leaders should do always, not just with respect to AI, but these are leadership traits or tactics or what have you. And you don't need to be in an authority position to be a leader. You can be a leader in your own life, in your family, in your organization, as an individual contributor by doing these things. So, if you do lead people, these are the things you should be doing. And if you don't, these are the things maybe to have a conversation with your leader or your manager about. These are the things that I would like, in support. I encourage you to have those conversations. So this is a callback to one of my Substack articles. It's a framework that I use to get over my ontological shock. I won't go too deep here because there is an article that you can go read, and I'll have a link to drive you over there later if you're interested. But this is basically a choice table. Should I go all in on AI or should I hold back? And the purpose of this is that, you know, dealing with uncertainty is very difficult as human beings. We're presented with uncertainty all the time on a regular basis, and our brain is wanting to get to a quick, easy decision where we can drive through, making change. Um, with respect to AI, I felt like if I dove into it and I made AI really good, am I hastening my replacement in the workforce? Like, should I just totally ignore it? And so I built this basically, choice table, um, which if you're familiar with, Blaise Pascal, this is Pascal's wager just applied to AI. And, it was something that helped me to find what's my way forward. And basically it's laying out, if you go all in at best, you're gonna win 3 out of 4 times. And by that I mean, like, if you remember that gap that we had earlier in the presentation, that gap is where early adopters live. That's where you can push things forward at your organization. It's where new monetary opportunities are happening in the market, right? The hiring market is really weird right now. We all know that. But you're starting to see roles like AI enablement, AI adoption, change management, um, AI applied to analytics, and of course, all the people that are, doing all of your normal jobs have this layered over top of it. But there's going to be roles like a forward deployed engineer. Their whole job is to go out into a new organization and help them to implement AI. These can be very, very lucrative opportunities for you as an individual if you're going to choose to do the work to enable them. That's what I'm focused on. I want to drive my work forward. I want to move the areas that I focus in on forward with AI. And by doing that, I become more valuable to my organization, not less. Um, you know, it's not a prediction. I'm not predicting that AI is going to replace the workforce or it's going to do nothing. The messy answer is it's probably somewhere in the middle. So what we've seen of every technological change throughout history, there's an on ramp that goes for way longer than people thought. But what this does give you is agency, right? I have a choice. I can move forward, and that's very, very powerful. Um, Without this, I felt absolutely unmoored. So, I don't know where AI is going to end up, but I do know that when I sit down on a Thursday afternoon, I can push it forward just a little bit because I made this choice. So, if you're here today and you haven't dove into the AI world, how do I start? Right? What does starting look like? Well, I basically created a ladder here, right? So the first part of the ladder is just opening up a chat window, Chat GPT, Claude, Cursor, Grok. There's any number of things you can choose from. Of course, if you're doing it in the context of your work organization, make sure it's an approved tool. Do not be putting your company data into Chat GPT without approval. But just get started, right? One real task. So sit down and the one task that you repeat week over week, maybe it's the report, it's a monthly end-all report, it's an email that I send, whatever that is, just sit down in your chat and say, like, this is what I'm doing, describe the problem, and try to get AI to help you through that task. Simplest thing that you can do. Everybody can do it on the free tier, right? All of these tools have free options where you can just get started. So you don't even have any money that you have to invest here to get going. Rung two is when you start to find patterns about what worked, right? You have to fail a lot at rung one to get to rung two. Um, One of the things that I've noticed a lot with people when I've talked to them about, like, what are you doing with AI and how are you using it? The people that are most against the AI adoption step are someone that maybe have tried it one time and they said, "Oh, I tried it one time and I did this thing and it failed." And so I just stopped. You're gonna fail. Failure is how you learn. But once you get through the other side, you can start to structure things into, a skill file. Um, I use a lot of Claude, so I have a skill that goes through a process that structures information in such a way, and it shares it with people that I need. And I don't have to go and retype all of that prompt each time I want to do this. I can just say backslash, you know, success or backslash whatever I name that skill, and it will just fire off and do that process. This is super cool. Um, it's an interesting thing, and you can find skills that other people are using. Whether you go to someone on YouTube and they say like, "Here's my GitHub repo," or in within your organization, if you have an organizational Anthropic account or whatever, you can share a skill with another person. And so go out, and I would encourage you to go out and have those conversations about what are you doing, how do you prompt it, how do you structure something such that you can get an expected result out of the other time or out of the other side. So I was here at rung one or rung two for like the full time of my 18 months, right? So when we're talking about all this ontological shock, I'm doing this work trying to do the learning, trying to get it to stick in the same way that before I knew what VLOOKUP was, I was trying to do those things. But until you've done it in the context of your work, it's going to be hard for this to stick. I don't quite know what you would call that, but it's basically a muscle, right? So like if you're using Excel every week at your work, you get good at it over time. Same thing with AI. Stop retyping, save what worked. Rung three is where things start to get pretty interesting, right? For me, this happened about February when Anthropic enabled what's called co-work. So basically, instead of just being able to chat or maybe have a series of chats with an agent, suddenly I could have it manipulate my files. It could move things around on my desktop or, in my file system. It can create new files. It can edit existing files. This is really where I started to go, okay, this is different and this is new. Um, so I'm at a point now where for me, rung three is like where I start. I start by having, a series of files or folders created every time I interact with my AI. And so I always know where things are. I always know, what the expected result is. Rung four, let it work while you're not watching, which is super weird, right? Like you get in and you start off, kick off a conversation, you give it a series of tasks, and it's going to take it maybe an hour. You can just kick it off, hide it away on your desktop, and it will come, you'll come back the hour later, and that work will be there waiting for you to edge it forward. This is super cool. And you can do this multiple times at the same time, right? Like in my Claude window, I'll have one task that's running that's building, getting me prepped for my next series of customer calls. And then in the other one, we're doing an internal review coming up. I need to gather some data and structure that so that I can be prepared for that. And then on the other one, I'm structuring some other data. All of this stuff is basically like, saying it plainly, it's like an army of workers that you can get to do things for you. You're not going to start by getting to rung four immediately. You're going to have to climb each one of these. And it's super fun to help other people get through this too, right? My wife, who I mentioned before, she's a teacher. She's starting to use AI, and not just one AI, but several. And it's been super fun to watch her go from one to two to three to four. And you can have some predictable things about what kind of questions somebody's going to have at each one, right? Like maybe you don't start by telling somebody to build a skill file when they've not already, gone through and had chats with an agent. They're not going to be able to understand what you're talking about. So again, rung four is letting it work while you're not watching. And you've been looking at rung four for the last 30 minutes while we've been talking here. I didn't design these slides, right? I built this deck as sort of an illustration of what you can do while you're doing your other work if you're using AI in a very productive way. Um, this was all built by Claude. It was a succession of chats and tasks. We practiced it, I recorded it, we refined it, changed some slides, add some slides, do some things. But I did not physically go in and make even one of these slides. Um, it's super cool to be able to say, it's not magic. This is something that everybody can learn. Um, so again, we're on that change curve. You as an individual can help yourself and you can help others, whether you're a leader or not, through that change curve. And I'm going to continue to go through that change curve too. Some days are, I'm at the peak. Some days I'm at the trough. It's okay. It's expected. So I've got a couple of links here. If you're interested in particular about ontological shock and the ideas of like, why are we at this place we are with respect to AI? The pAIscal's Wager series is a series of articles that I wrote to sort of explain how I've come through this. You got a little piece of it throughout this chat. But I would encourage you to go dig through some more there if you're interested. The middle QR code is a link to my LinkedIn. If we're not connected, I would love for you to reach out, connect, send me a DM. If anybody on the call is in a layoff or you're in between jobs or whatever, and you're just looking for some support, it's something that I'm giving to other people right now. I would be happy to give you a resume review or whatever. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. And then again, just a small plug here. One Model is the best people analytics product on the market. If you're curious about what people analytics is or how we help companies to structure their workforce data and how that's going to help your company as you transition into a world with AI, we'd love to have a chat. If you'd like, I'll just offer to join your demo. If you mentioned that, hey, I saw Kyle's presentation, would love for him to join my demo. I'd love to do that with our sales team. So with that, let's do some Q&A if there are questions.
Awesome. Thanks again, Kyle. Super practical and yeah, it's just such a hot topic in our community and around the world. So really appreciate you bringing some insights for us. And for those who are here and want to ask some questions, feel free to throw it in the chat and we'll get those questions answered. I saw one earlier from Trevor Johnson. He asked, what's the best practice for ensuring we stay as close to the cutting edge of these major AI updates and how they may fit into our workflows or with our teams, especially to avoid burnout?
It's a good question. What I'm doing, as the individual is um, I have a couple podcasts or YouTubers that I follow. I've got some people on Substack that I follow. I think if you go and you look at my Substack, you could see who I'm following. Nate B. Jones, I'll give a shout out. He's a YouTuber. He's also got his own Substack. He was the first one that I started to follow that just sort of brought down the ideas of AI to my knowledge worker level that I was able to sort of wrestle with it. And then there's a podcast that I follow on Spotify. It's called Moonshots. Um, Very, very wild AI possibilities are talked about on this thing, but in particular, they have a focus on staying optimistic and wrestling with what do these things mean. And they're all the way out on the frontier. It's folks from like MIT and Peter Diamandis, who's been around like the X Prize and whatnot. So I feel like I kind of let them find the edge, and I don't have to go out and drag myself through it. And then I would hark back to like experimentation. Experimentation should be what we're all doing. Shout out to Trevor.
Yeah, great question, Trevor. I've listened to the Moonshot podcast too with Peter, and yeah, they do a good job just kind of expanding your horizons on what's possible, and they're very engaging episodes too. So I'll co-sign that one. I'm not seeing any more questions. So Kyle, you answered everything for everyone all in an hour webinar. Nice work.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you guys.
All right. Thanks again, Kyle. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.